Yo, today was a good day because Thug came home. I was watching the lead attorney. There were 27,000 people in the chat. And at one point, somebody said Glanville is somewhere rubbing all the fur off his service dog at this point because he is 38 hot, and I know he is. Honestly, the icing on the cake for me, because I knew Thug was coming home at one point or another. But let me just be very clear. What I want to see at this point is I don't even know what day the Super Bowl is on, but I want to see Kendrick Lamar bring Thug out on stage. Now, I don't know if the courts will approve him perform and take it to trial, but if they could just play the music, plug him in. He deserves a Super Bowl performance. And if I was a betting woman, I'm willing to say somebody in the NFL is going to hear this and they're going to take it back to the peoples and they're going to deliver. And they're going to give us YSL fans what we want because it's provocative. It gets the people going, keeps the seats filled. When Jay-Z said, you want to bring in money for advertisements? Bring Thug to the Super Bowl. So let me tell you, Paige was fed up with the prosecution. She was tired of them folks. And honestly, this is a very teachable moment and a valuable lesson for them. You need to be prepared, especially when it's one of the biggest cases in history. And they've proven to us time and time again that they weren't. Listen, God is good. And for people who are like, oh, Thug was guilty, whatever, it doesn't matter. He deserves a fair trial. And we know that he simply did not get that during any part of this process. And that in itself is the problem. I'm not even going to talk about Love reading off their terms and conditions of what they wanted in the plea because she's insufferable. I'm glad I never have to hear her voice again. I don't even like Hilton, but she had that Dora Bob thing going. So the back of her head looked very aesthetically pleasing during this trial. I just kept noticing, I'm like, oh, is that a press? Is that like a lace front? I don't know what was happening. Now we get to the best part. Brian still gets the mic and he literally gives us a rundown of everything the state did not tell us. And mind you, the move that Thug made was really risky because he had a non-negotiated plea. Everyone else that has taken a plea deal has had a negotiated plea. And I can't remember the exact number, but he was facing over 120 years in prison. Brian still did not want that man to take a plea deal at all. But he said every day, Thug says, like, he wakes up in hell. It's interesting that he stated that Thug actually eats out of a bag. And during the course of this trial, he had gained 75 pounds. And we remember when Thug got a lot bigger. But he's since lost a majority of it. And he hinted to Thug actually having some type of medical problem. And so for those reasons, as well as Thug saying, my family is suffering, he just wanted to be done with it. He didn't have another 3 months to give to sit through that trial. Neither did we. So some of the things provided in Steele's list of the things that the state didn't say, he told us about how Lucci was taunting Thug saying, I slept with your fiance. I slept with your fiance. And then he was telling the world, oh, his music is trash. He gave us the tea that we should have been hearing over the past 2 years. And I'm assuming that the fiance is Jerica Carlay or Jerica Carlay. Beautiful girl, by the way. But Lucci was taunting Thug over that. So Thug came back at one point and was like, hey, we can do an album together after he called his music trash. And then he continued taunting him about Jerica Carlay. And that's when Thug came back and was like, you know, I would have taken you out by now, but I just respect the fact that you like take care of your mother. And Thug's attorney is basically like, I mean, it was fitting for the context of what was happening because they were going back and forth. And what man wouldn't pop off when another man is taunting him about sleeping with his fiance? And then still talks about a song that Thug did with Nicki Minaj. And they were trying to use lyrics from this song. The lyrics were, I never unalive nobody, but I got something to do with that body. And he said if the state would have just bothered to look it up, Nicki Minaj actually wrote the song and he turned over the evidence that Nicki, in fact, wrote the song. Then he mentions another thing in the indictment where apparently Thug put a 24 million unalive for hire on somebody's head. But he was like, if they would have just scrolled up in the Instagram chat, it was a picture of, he didn't say his name, but it's Lil Uzi after he went and got the $24 million pink diamond surgically put in his forehead. And we all remember when Uzi went and did that. So essentially they're using all of these random things that don't have anything to do with Donovan Thomas to try and convict Thug. He mentions the geofencing that they did and how they targeted the McDonald's, the barbershop, and another location. And there was never a time that Thug's devices are actually there. And then when they did the pings off the cell phone towers, Thug was never around anyone that they also said was involved with the actual unaliving of Donovan Thomas. Even when it came to little Woody, when Woody called him, he told him, he was like, you know, if you did something, you need to get out of here. But if you didn't do it, go to the police. Like, just go to the police, let 12 handle it. Now, mind you, Thug has been sitting in jail since May 9th of 2022. And what's crazy is this is a RICO case, but the prosecution wanted Thug to admit YSL was a gang so bad they were willing to give him 15 years probation and drop one of the charges, which was the actual RICO charge. Make it make sense. Why have we been here for 2 years if you were going to drop the RICO? They also were going to drop the gang count as well as the firearm count. And with that earlier plea, they were going to let him walk out the door same day, which further confirms they don't think that he's an inherent risk. They don't even think he's going to hurt anybody. And they originally denied how many bonds? Okay, for the sentence, Paige Whitaker, Judge Whitaker, she's a smart cookie. She took into consideration that before the state came back with all of these additional things piled onto their plea, that they were just going to give him the 15 years probation, let him walk out free on the street. So apparently they don't think that he's going to do any harm. So why would she treat it any different? Like, what is the difference? Those are good critical thinking skills. She reads through the counts in the sentencing, but what it comes down to is a total of 40 years, 5 years in prison, followed by 15 years on probation, followed by the backloaded 20 years. That can be served in custody if he is not successful on his 15-year probation. However, if he is successful on his 15-year probation, those 20 years will be commuted, basically nullified, and it'll be considered time served, and he'll be done at the end of his 15-year probation. He has active reporting for his probation for the first 7.5 years. After 48 hours of his release, he cannot remain in Atlanta metro area, which I think is a good call. And even when Thug talked during the process and he said his piece, which was that's a whole nother piece in itself, but he actually expressed his desire to leave Atlanta. He's ready to go. He might be gone already. For the first 10 years, he's actually able to come back to Atlanta metro area if there is some type of wedding, funeral, or graduation from a member of his immediate family. And then later, Judge Whitaker modified it to where if there's like an extreme illness or something like that, that he would be able to come back into Atlanta metro area. Now, with that, if he does come in, he can come in 24 hours prior to the event happening. So if there's a wedding, he can come in 24 hours prior, and then he has to leave within 48 hours after the event has ended. And for each year that he's on probation, Judge Whitaker mandated that he come back to the Atlanta metro area at least 4 times a year, where he would do some type of anti-gang, anti-violence, anti-blicky event or presentation. And he can do these at the schools, whether it's a high school, middle school, grade school, a boys and girls club, and he can also incorporate some type of concert, like benefit concert, into that, which would also in turn count towards his actual hours of community service, which would be 100 hours of community service that he would need to do for each year that he's on probation. Of course, he can't have association with anyone that is in a gang, but she did make an exception for his brother. And he's still able to communicate with Sergio Kitchens as long as they're contractually obligated through music, which the state actually did not want. The prosecution did not want him to have any type of ties with Gunna after taking this plea deal, but the judge was very lenient, and she said, hey, as long as you're contractually obligated to this person, I'm not going to prevent you from being around them or doing business with them. We're not going to see him doing the hand signs anymore, the terminology, nothing that promotes gang activity. He can't be within arm's reach of a firearm. But again, Paige Whitaker was so fair with him because she stated that, basically she understands he needs security detail, and they, whether it's law enforcement or private security, that they are going to have firearms on them. And so that is reasonable. But he himself can't have it on him. He has to submit to random drug screens. And she also asked that he waive his Fourth Amendment right in regards to searches. So now he'll be subject to random searches. And last but not least, he will be able to retain his passport and do anything necessary to be able to travel for his concerts, whether it is throughout the U.S. or overseas. I'm telling you, Judge Whitaker, girl, God bless you. Anyways, that's my recap. Y'all have a blessed night. I am over the moon.